Yes. So, hello everybody to this seminar on quality of life technologies. I hope it's a very interesting topic for you as you have registered for this, and it's one of the seminar series which are planning for the future. And we have a pleasure to host Dr. Maria Toledo-Rodriguez, who is assistant professor at the University of Nottingham, and also it's very long-term great friend of mine. We've been mentoring each other as a PhD students, and she was a postdoc. Nevertheless, we're going to talk today about resilience and what we can do in order to improve our mental health overall, and I'm looking forward to this talk. So I let you, Maria, introduce yourself as well as tell us more about this webinar, and also at this particular moment, I hope the screen sharing works again. Thank you.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
So before sharing the screen, well, I could start already sharing the screen. So, yes, now it's working. I'm not a Zoom user, so it's taking a little bit. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and present to an audience that is quite different from the audience that I'm used to present. So as Kate said, my name is Maria Toledo, and I'm assistant professor in neuroscience in the University of Nottingham. My long-term interest from the science point of view and also from the teaching point of view is about what can we do in order to improve our mental resilience and our well-being. So the reason why I'm giving this talk is because Professor Wack and I want already for some time to join forces, and maybe that I will start teaching some of the things that I've been teaching the students in neuroscience here in Nottingham. That recent study that I did, a recent survey showed that their mental resilience increased, particularly in the time of COVID, that was an eye-opening, and I'm really happy that our students had this extra protection from all the challenges. So Kate has already put in the chat a link to a form that I will be very grateful if you could complete it, and it's your feedback about this presentation. The reason being is this is a pilot. What I have done is I have tried to summarize information that is a 6 or 12 hours workshop that I do with my neuroscience students over 2 years. And I have tried to take some of the things that may be relevant for people more from a technical background, and I'm trying to bring it to a level where it will be easy for you to understand, and also to try to write, to explain it in a way that it is something that is that will interest you. But that form where I ask for feedback, I will be very happy to know from what I have done, what is relevant or not. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you about what I'm going to tell you today. As I say, I have summarized a little bit this workshop that has been shown to improve the mental resilience of our students. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, what is mental resilience? Then I will explain a bit about neuroplasticity. This is needed so that you will understand that actually we can change our brain, we can change the way we think, we feel. And then we are going to go through 3 interventions that everybody should be able to do them today. And you will not need a very fancy kit to do them, that are going to help you to improve your mental resilience. But what I am those are physical exercise, mindfulness, yoga, and sleep. Now I'm going to be telling you about what is changing in your brain, because chances are that you have already heard many times that physical exercise is good for your mental health. But what I want is that you will see peer-reviewed evidence that shows why that happens, so that, as I have seen with my students, that is something that makes they buy it more, they take it seriously. So what is mental resilience? when I ask our students what is mental resilience, they will say, well, it's never to be upset, it's always to be very strong. That is not mental resilience. So mental resilience is not never experience a problem or pain. You have to feel the pain. You are human. It's not keeping on like nothing happened. You should react to what is happening to you. It's part of our coping mechanism. Also, mental resilience is not a capacity that you cannot change. All of us can improve and increase our mental resilience. And I will be telling you a little bit of how. And also, mental resilience is not something unconscious. You can consciously decide to improve your mental resilience. And sometimes just reminding yourself there are no mistakes, only learning opportunities will help you to react in a different way to a setback and then be better prepared to improve. So as I explained, mental resilience is like bouncing back. So I tell the students, you may not remember the times of Tom and Jerry, but mental resilience is basically like when Tom gets smashed in the head with a hammer, the head is going to shrink. You are going to feel the pain. That is the part of being human. That is important because if you will not feel the pain, you will be a psychopath, you will be dead. Otherwise, you will feel pain. But what is important is that you bounce back. It's like when Tom's head comes back and you return to what you were before, or you could even improve from them. So improving mental resilience is just basically to make it this bouncing back stronger and maybe faster. There are many interventions that they have been shown to improve mental resilience, and these are many everyday things. Physical exercise, mindfulness, yoga, sleep, also gratefulness, growth mindset. Sorry, I cannot see what is in the slide because I have the pictures. So I'm just going to, gratefulness, journaling. There are many different things that you could be doing to improve your mental resilience, and it has been shown by the field of positive psychology. For this talk, I'm going to be focusing on physical exercise, mindfulness, yoga, and sleep. So, before going about what you have to do in order to improve your mental resilience, it's important that you will understand the concept of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability that all of us have to change our brain, the way our neurons are connected, the number of neurons in our brain, in response to things that come from the external environment or from actions that we do ourselves. And that is what mental resilience is based on. Because what happens is our brain is not static, it's changing through life, and it is reorganizing all the time and in response to what we do and what we receive. In the past, it was thought that this was the capacity that the brain lost after childhood, but it has become clear that this is possible, and even 90 years old still retain the capacity to develop new neurons in some parts of the brain, like the hippocampus. So a very quick thinking exercise for the participants, thinking about actually things that you have changed in your brain in the last years. So think about three things, a couple of things that you have learned in the past 5 years. And then you have here a cartoon of different areas of the brain that they are in charge of different parts of different activities. Looking at this map, try to think which areas did you change. For example, if you learn roller skating, you probably improve your balance, therefore you were changing your cerebellum. I will give you 20 seconds, half a minute, just to have a thought and maybe write a little bit in a piece of paper. Okay, so chances are that you may have learned a new language or to dance or to a new maths problem, and there are some areas of your brain that have changed. Now I'm going to start thinking about the 3 interventions that I told you that have been shown to improve our mental resilience, and to give you a little bit more detail about that. Let's start with physical exercise. So there are tons and tons of studies that they have shown that healthy individuals that usually exercise, they have less anxiety symptoms. Now you may ask me, well, of course, if I'm anxious, I will be scared to leave the house, so I will not exercise. Good. Then there are many other studies that what they have done is to look for people that they have anxiety disorders, and then they assign them either to do exercise or not. And they showed that doing physical exercise actually helped reduce the effect, the symptoms of anxiety of people that had stress-related disorders. Moreover, the positive impact of exercise on reducing the symptoms of anxiety is as good as medication. But I will say that the side effects are much better. So I would prefer to do exercise than taking medication. Now, I will also explain a little bit, give a sneak peek of what I do with my students, because this is something that might also interest you. I not only tell them about things, I say, let's go in, don't trust what I say, let's go into the peer review papers, let's go into the literature, look at the paper, analyze it, criticize it, try to see if we also agree with the data. And I bring a lot of systematic reviews and meta-analysis because those are the closest to the absolute truth we can come at the moment when the data was acquired. Because what a systematic review and meta-analysis does is to look at the entire scientific literature that has been published in a specific topic, have all the papers together, look at the results, and then see what is the average, what is the mean of those results. So this is a systematic review that they were looking at the impact of, it was a randomized controlled trials where they were looking at the impact of different types of exercise on people that they have different types of stress disorders. So before going to the stress disorders, just you can see here on the table the names of the different studies. And on the right, you have the black box that will be like the mean effect with standard deviation, or in this case, coefficient of variance. And the red diamond is basically after averaging all the results from all the papers, what was the final result. And you can see that the peaks of the diamond don't touch the middle line. That means that the results are significant and they go towards favors exercise. So that means that after looking at all these studies, they found that physical exercise decreased the levels of anxiety that people that had panic disorder, social anxiety, generalized anxiety, and also PTSD had. So this not only reassures you that you have a positive effect, but also that the effect spreads through many different types of anxiety disorders. So that is something that is generally good. Okay, so you may ask yourself, how can that happen? I mean, I am moving a muscle. How it is that me moving my legs is going to have an impact on the way that I'm going to panic when I will have to speak in public or when I will have to meet a new person in the street? There are many, many studies that they have been looking at this, and I am going to be focusing on the impact on the hippocampus and the glucocortical receptor, well, basically because this was our research. So I'm very biased here. So yes, a little bit of explanation. You might have heard about the HPA axis. This is a part of our stress response that basically is organizing, is coordinating, is driving our stress response. When something frightens us, there are signals that come from the hypothalamus to the pituitary that send signals to the adrenal glands, just above our kidneys, that they release cortisol. You might have heard about cortisol, that is like the stress hormone. Well, the interesting bit about cortisol is that in the hippocampus, another part of our brain, we have receptors for cortisol, and basically those are the glucocorticoid receptors, or well, there are several types, but the glucocorticoid receptors that they are in the hippocampus are going, when they become activated by cortisol, are going to stop the HPA axis. It's like pressing the brakes in the stress response. What we found is that when you exercise, the amount of glucocorticoid receptors that you have in the hippocampus is much higher, meaning the same amount of cortisol is going to have a much stronger response to shut down the stress response. So basically, it's like you will give extra power to the brakes, and that is going to help you to calm down in a stress-inducing situation. Now, we already talked about anxiety, but actually physical exercise has many more positive effects in our well-being. There are many studies that they show that people that they are active are less depressed. Now you may say, well, of course, if I'm depressed, the last thing I will want to do is to exercise. I'm just going to be sitting down, moping and crying all day long. Good. But there are many more studies that what they did was to look for people that were depressed, that they had severe depression or different types of depression. And then they had either exercise, medication, or both of them. And then they look what was the impact. And what they show is that physical exercise can reduce the effects of depression. The effect is moderate, it's not massive, but it's extremely significant. Every single study almost that they look at this, they will find that physical exercise will reduce the symptoms of depression. And not only that, the effect that exercise has on depression is as good as cognitive behavioral therapy or antidepressants. And when comparing with antidepressants, I will say, I want the side effects of exercise. I don't want the ones from medication. Now, very interestingly, exercise also has been shown to prevent the relapse of depression, because the best predictor of having a depression is whether you have already a depression before. If you already have if you have a lifetime of being depressed, you will have more chances to be depressed again and again. Exercise is going to help you break that loop. Okay, but it's not only depression. It's also physical exercise improves memory and attention. So even if you are not depressed, that's something that probably will make you interested. So how does this happen? There are a million things that physical exercise will do in order to improve mental health, depression, and memory and attention. One of them is that physical exercise increases growth factors in the brain. So growth factors, they are like fertilizers. They are going to help the brain to be stronger and better and work better. Some that us and other labs have shown are brain-derived neurotrophic factor, fibroblast growth factor, VEGF, and IGF. And all of them, what will happen is they are going to have a positive effect in the brain, but they are going to come from different parts. So while BDNF and FGF will be produced in the brain, so I am exercising and my brain is producing more of this growth factor, VEGF and IGF are produced in the muscles, and they will travel through the blood till the brain, and then they will have a positive impact in the brain. And the impact that they have is that they are going to lead to an increase in neurogenesis and synaptogenesis. Neurogenesis is the creation of new cells in the brain. We have the capacity in two areas of the brain, hippocampus and olfactory bulb, that all through our life, we have new neurons that are created there. And especially in the hippocampus, those new neurons are important for memory and also sometimes for emotion. Synaptogenesis is extremely important because you will have it throughout the entire brain. And you remember that cartoon at the beginning of which parts of the brain did you change? They have changed because of the changes in synaptic connectivity while you were learning to do something new. So how does this work? Why is it important? So you can think, for example, like the neurons will be the trees in a jungle, and dendrites and the synapses are the branches in the trees, and our thoughts are, the signals from the brain, they are the monkeys in this jungle. So if you are sedentary, sitting down all day long on your couch, you are going to have some trees, but not many, and they are going to have few branches. There is not going to be a lot of synaptic connection between them. While if you do physical exercise, you will have more trees, but more importantly, the branches are going to be, you will have more, and they are going to be richer, and they are going to be overlap between them. There are going to be more synaptic connectivity. So what will happen is that when your brain has to work, when you have to think, if you are sedentary, it's going to take longer for the signals to pass because it's going to be more difficult to jump from one tree to another to the monkeys. While if you are exercise, because they are really packed with new synapses, the activity will go faster and the thoughts will go like faster in a way. This is very, very, very simplified, but is, and that's also some of the feedback I would like to know. What is the right level from somebody that is not a neuroscientist to understand some of the concepts that I want to explain? Because I believe that in order for you to profit from this learning, you have to understand the science behind the things that I am telling you. Okay, so we talk about exercise now. Let's move to mindfulness and yoga. And you will say, oh, well, yes, of course, you are working with your brain. It has to be good for the brain. Mindfulness interventions, and there are many, from Tai Chi, yoga, breathing meditation, they have been shown to improve the symptoms of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, eating disorders, and chronic pain. So you see there are lots of things that just by you focusing on the wall in front of you may be able to affect. And that's a little bit wow. So bringing it more to something that is relevant to university students, because at the end of the day, this is going to be the target audience. There is, again, a systematic review here where they had randomized controlled trials of students in university where they measured their levels of anxiety, depression, and stress before and after doing a mindfulness practice, yoga, Tai Chi. And you can see in the red diamond at the bottom of the graphs that the effect was significant and it was always positive. Students that they did mindfulness practices or yoga, they had an improvement in anxiety, depression, and stress. And I don't know the students there, but here our students, they are massively stressed all the time. And this is something that probably every student is going to want, to decrease the amount of stress, depression, and anxiety. And the most interesting thing from this study is that they showed that the effect was similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, exercise, or medication. Now, when we go back always to think about medication, I studied pharmacy at the start of my career, and I remember the very first thing that you learn from any medicine is the side effects. And the side effects for antidepressant and anxiolytics, they are not fun. So I think anybody, obviously not everybody is going to benefit from the same intervention. Maybe somebody's going to need medication, somebody's going to need exercise or mindfulness. But if you can have an intervention that will not have side effects, I think that will be the first one to choose. Okay, so mindfulness yoga is good for depression and or anxiety. And how does this work? Well, I'm going to be focusing on two bits that I go in depth to discuss with my neuroscience students. The first one is the vagus nerve. That is a very long part of our parasympathetic nervous system. That is the autonomic nervous system. And the vagus nerve is like a two-way street where you get information from the body to the brain, but there is also commands that they are sent to the body. So the activation of the vagus nerve is going to lead to lowering of the respiratory rate and also will have an impact on endocrine secretion. It's going to slow the heart rate. It's going to suppress inflammation. Now, you might have heard now about inflammation being bad by COVID. It's really bad. Inflammation in general is bad. It will age you. It will is linked to obesity. Is something that is becoming more and more clear. That is, for example, linked with neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's. So you do not want inflammation. Something that will suppress inflammation is good. It also regulates the contraction of smooth muscles and the glandular secretion and has an impact on coughing, sniffing, swallowing, vomiting. Now, as I said, the vagus nerve is a two-way street because the activation is going to affect your heart rate, but you can activate, you can modify the activation of the vagus nerve by things that you can consciously do. And the most study is respiration. So during inhalation, you are suppressing the vagus nerve activation, but you facilitate it during exhalation and during slow respiratory cycles. And probably you remember that in many of the yoga practices and all these mindfulness practices, there is a focus on your breathing. And sometimes just even breathing meditation is good enough in order to help you calm down, reduce your heart rate, and maybe calm down from a panic attack. So this is one of the areas that I'm highlighting. The other one is going to be a little bit complex, but again, I am trying to go from me telling you to let's going to look at the data, let's going to understand the data, that this is what helped with my students, this is what they trusted, what I tell them, and then they actually took it with them, was that the impact that yoga has on the amount of GABA in a part of our brain, the thalamus, that it is important, and also on depression. So I'm going to talk about two randomized controlled trials that they were done in the Massachusetts General Hospital, very good quality, and then they did another one to confirm the effect. They had patients in one of the trials that they had major depressive disorder, and in the other one they had healthy controls. What they measured was the amount of GABA. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, very important in our brain, and they were looking at the amounts inside this part of the brain, the thalamus. And also they look at the scales of depression, because in the ones for the students, for the participants that they were depressed. They choose different time points. So they had the time point where it was before they started doing yoga. Then they had another time point where it was after 12 weeks doing yoga, when the patients came to the clinic. And then the patients had to do yoga, a session of yoga in the clinic. And then they had another session that was during that, after having the yoga. And here you can see the part of the red rectangle is the thalamus. So what they found, here I will try to help you with this graph. In the blue, you have the patients that have depression. In red, the healthy controls. First scan was before they started doing yoga. Second scan was 12 weeks doing yoga when they came to the clinic. And the third scan was 12 weeks doing yoga right after doing a yoga session. And you can see that there is a significant increase in the patients that they have depression from before doing the yoga to 12 weeks after they did the yoga session. And you can also see that in the people that they were healthy controls, there is a significant increase in the amount of GABA before doing yoga to after doing yoga when they have been doing for 12 weeks. And if you have done yoga yourself, you may it may make sense to you because this is the feeling of calmness that you have when you finish the session. But not only that, what they show is that there was a significant decrease in the levels of depression to the point that the patients were not depressed any longer. And that's really important. And also that there was a significant decrease in the levels of anxiety, also found in the healthy volunteers. So these results were later on replicated by the same group, and it will be fantastic if other groups could do it now. Doing this time of spectroscopy, magnetic resonance studies are really complicated. So hopefully other groups can also repeat similar studies soon. I have mentioned now about two things that you can do, that you actively can decide to do. Now, I'm going to talk about one that is more difficult to force yourself and say, now I will sleep. But I personally believe that this is the single intervention that is going to have the strongest effect and is going to be the easiest for you to do. And you may say, well, I know I just need to go to sleep earlier. It's a little bit more complicated because you may go to bed early, but you may not fall asleep. You may wake up in the middle of the night and you may not be able to sleep so well. So there are a few things that you can do, and I'm going to explain you what is happening in your brain that is going to determine that you can have a better sleep and the effect that is going to have on your well-being. So sleep is vital for us, for our mental and our physical health. If you sleep chronically for months, less than 7 hours a night, and I know some people will say, oh gosh, sleep is a waste of my life. I'm unconscious for a third of the day. Why should I do that? I can do so many things. Well, if you happen to sleep less than 7 hours a night for many months, you're going to have poorer memory and concentration. I think all of us, we can think about that. But also there is going to be an increase in the amount of depression that you may experience, the anxiety. But not only that, you are going to have higher levels of obesity, and there is a dose response. The less you sleep, the more obese you are. And you may say, well, but is it because I eat more while I'm awake? No, it's because your metabolism is changed. Leading to the fact that you are going to end up having glucose intolerance. And sometimes there are some studies that are quite drastic. By depriving sleep for a few hours a night for some days, you turn people to pre-diabetic. And that is something that can have very serious consequences. Also, there is an increase in the cardiovascular morbidity. If you sleep too much, also might be an issue. And the biggest thing is you will die earlier because there is an increase in age-specific mortality. So now it may be that this catches your attention and you say, okay, I need to sleep more. I will change the alarm clock. But what is happening in our brain that is going to determine that we can sleep or not? And I'm going to be talking about two substances and two interventions that right now you can change them, you can have an impact on them, and you can have an impact on your sleep. So Oh, sorry, before going through all of this, it's just I cannot see part of the slide. How is it this happen? Chronic sleep has been shown to have an impact on the brain because it reduces the volume in some important areas like the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. They are very important for memory, for thinking, for coordinating things and just being us, what we are. This is due in part to a reduction in neurogenesis. I have mentioned before about increasing neurogenesis. This is reduction on neurogenesis, having less neurons in our brain. Also, an increase in the neuroinflammatory response. Remember, inflammation in your brain is not good. And also a decrease in the dendrite and spine density. So there is less connectivity between the neurons. And it's like that forest I was telling about, they cut some of the branches and the trees become further apart from each other. So that it may, and you are going to have less myelin, that is like a shield that protects the axons, like the wires between the neurons to make the signals go faster. So if you have less myelin, they will go slower. So this is a depiction of what a normal brain will be rested, red neurons, green healthy, yellow astrocytes and brown microglia. If you have a little deprivation of sleep, you are going to lose a little bit of neurons, your astrocytes are going to start getting activated and the microglia. Chronic sleep, you are going to have less connection between the neurons, less neurons, and you are going to have an activated state of microglia and astrocytes that it is not good for your brain. So what is, as I was mentioning before, it's not only that you can decide, okay, I will put the alarm clock a little bit later today, but it could be that you say, well, but I just wake up. There is nothing to do. I mean, especially now in the summer, there is 6 o'clock. I cannot fall asleep again, or I go to sleep and I just turn and turn, and it always takes me 2 hours until I fall asleep. So I will tell you about 2 molecules and how they work in our brain, and 2 things that you could be doing in order to improve your sleep as from this moment and as from tonight. So first molecule I'm going to focus is going to be caffeine. And we all misuse and use caffeine, and this is what probably is keeping us alert for most of the day. But I'm going to explain you how caffeine can be bad for your rest, and actually you have to be careful with when do you take your caffeine. So caffeine works because it blocks the adenosine receptors. Why is this important? Well, let's start from the beginning. When we are awake, the longer we are awake, the more extracellular adenosine we have in the brain. So it's like the more rubbish you have in the brain that is created by the cells working. Now, the more adenosine you have outside your brain in the extracellular space, the more your need to sleep. This is basically telling you your brain needs a rest. There is all this rubbish that needs to be cleaned away. Caffeine comes, and caffeine is an antagonist of the adenosine receptors. That means that it's going to block them, and adenosine is not going to be able to activate them, so that wakes us up. Isn't that fantastic? Yes, but the half-life of caffeine is very, very long. So an espresso that you may have been drinking now during this lecture is not going to let you sleep at night. Why? Because it takes a very long time for our body to get rid of the caffeine, to dispose the caffeine. And that means that, yes, by all means, caffeine will be very helpful early in the morning. But as the day passes, the less caffeine you have, the better. Now you may say, well, but I've been drinking caffeine all my life until very late, and I don't have any problems sleeping. Okay, great, but maybe it can be that reducing the amount of caffeine is going to even improve your sleep. The second molecule I'm going to be talking is melatonin. So chances are that you have been hearing about jet lag and melatonin pills. And from all the research that I have found, actually melatonin pills, yeah, well, there's a better way to improve the amount of melatonin. And actually you don't have to swallow anything. But first, let me explain you how the light will prevent us from producing melatonin, and it's going to have an impact on our sleep, because that is going to help you understand why changing the type of light that you use is going to have a massive impact on your sleep. So when we are exposed to light, particularly in the blue spectrum, the third photoreceptor in our eyes is activated, and it activates the suprachiasmatic nuclei inside the brain. Those are going to shut down the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is the gland that will make melatonin. So while we have light coming to us through the screens, through the being outside that has bluish tone, we are not going to have melatonin, and that means that we are going to be awake. We are going to be alert. And that will also happen if you happen to go to sleep and either have a very bright light that you can read, or if you are reading in a screen. So you might already be familiar, and you may be using, and if not, you should, some apps in your mobile, in your screen, that they are going to turn the hue, the color towards the red, and remove the blues in the light that your screen is emitting in the night. If you do that, if you either close the blinds or don't use a laptop, or then change the color of your light towards the red, what will happen is that the third photoreceptor is not going to be activated any longer. And that means that the pineal gland can work and can produce loads of melatonin. That is going to increase. You can see in the graph, there is a little bit of a delay. So it's not like you switch off the lights and immediately you fall asleep. But if, let's say, 1 hour before the time that you need to sleep, you change everything towards the red, you will be able, at the time that you are supposed to sleep, to fall on asleep and have a very good quality of sleep, because also there is an impact, caffeine and also melatonin, on the type of sleep. So this was my lecture so far, and I hope I have covered all the topics, and I hope you have been able to understand, and I have been able to explain them at the right level. There is also more material that Dr. Wack has been kind enough to put in the link of the talk for people that they will want to know more. So it's at different levels. The videos, there are many of them TED Talks that they are very easy, and all the TED Talks are very accessible. There are some peer-reviewed papers and also books that they have been written by experts in the field, and they are also good for any audience. So these are about exercise, physical exercise, also about mindfulness. The videos, these are guided meditations, 3 different types of guided meditations that are really good. And the book was written by John Kabat-Zinn. He is the pioneer of bringing mindfulness practices to Western medicine. And he, in Massachusetts, he studied in MIT, but there in Boston, he was the one that started in Massachusetts General Hospital, started all his research, and there is a lot of very good research coming from people also that has been working with him. And also there are some videos in sleep, and well, one of the books that I brought is from one of our graduates from Nottingham University that happens to be professor these days in California, in Berkeley. But he is one of the experts in sleep, and I think that's also a very good book. So I would like to thank you very much and remind you about the survey. Kate has put the survey in the link, and if not, it's also going to be in the chat. So I will be very grateful if you could complete it, because it will help me know my audience, so that next time that this lecture is given, probably to students, is going to be something that they are going to be able to understand and to profit from it. So thank you very much. That was everything from me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We have other participants and some disappeared, unfortunately, but nevertheless, I would love to start a questioning. Thank you very much for this very insightful and very accessible view on the brain, actually. With the pictures, made it really easy for us to understand what gets expanded, what gets, what disappears under different conditions. I have a question to you as a neuroscientist. Why, until recently, we thought that the brain, what was the statement that around 30 we achieve our maximum and that's it, and here we go, something like this, right? Was there something like this, like the statement, scientifically also?
There have been many misconceptions about the brain, about the left and the right brain, and many things. Part of it was because of the techniques that we were using. So some of the lectures I give to my students, they are about the discovery of neurogenesis, and it's a real soap opera, and you have scientists destroying the careers of others because they say you don't know what you are talking about, and actually they found something that I think they should get the Nobel Prize, but the techniques were not good enough, they were not reliable enough, and because of that, we were not able. So, for example, with adult neurogenesis, and that was where careers were destroyed. Only a study, I think it was 10, maybe 20 years ago, they were able to give to patients a substance that will enter into the new neurons. So these were patients that had terminal cancer, and they agreed to take part on that. And they were really old, and they were able to see when they died because of the cancer that actually they had created new neurons. And even 2 years ago, there was another study that said, well, actually that doesn't happen. I have been looking at all these people that they could die in car accidents, and that did not happen. I personally think that the techniques that they were using were not the best, and that's why they couldn't see it.
Wow, amazing. And how much it limited us, right? In a sense, because it was like, oh, after 30, you just like forget about anything new, right? You're just like, this is the way you're going to live right now. If you, Alex or Igor, if you have any questions, just let us know, maybe raise your hand. In the meantime, in the interest of time, I will like to also then, if we go into this particular descriptions of these different interventions we can do for ourselves in order to improve our resilience, it looks like the sleep is underrated, meaning we always will hear, even like in the advertisement or whenever, it will be like always exercise more, and the second one will be eat better. And also when it comes to yoga and mindfulness, there is a specific thinking that it's for some like other people. I mean, when I say I do yoga, and some people are like, oh, okay, and specifically, I don't want to over kind of make it biased, but sometimes my male colleagues or friends will be like, oh, yoga, this kind of like, what are you doing? And in your mind, but then, okay, let's leave yoga behind, but let's sleep. Why? It's the easiest. You don't need to do anything, just the scheduling.
It is the easiest, but because of the fact that you are unconscious for a third of your life, you may think that you are wasting your life. And there was a study that was really, I think that is really funny or very interesting. They engineer a fly, so Drosophila, that you can easily do genetic engineering. And they engineer so that the flies sleep much less. They die much earlier. Because what happens is that sleep is extremely important to recover our body, our physical body, but also for our brain. It's basically, it's like cleaning the rubbish. You could say, I don't want that they will come these big rubbish collectors that once a week they are blocking the streets, but actually if you will not have them, everything will be full with rubbish. So it's the same with the sleep. And also the fact, so for example, there are things, little tiny things like thinking about melatonin that people does not even realize. I see here in the UK that they don't have blinds and you have just some flimsy curtains. When summer comes and the sun, you start having sun at 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, even if you try to sleep, the quality of your sleep is so much, much worse that actually you need to make sure that you are in a dark room in order to be able to profit from the sleep.
Wow, fascinating. Yes, Igor has a question. Go ahead, Igor.
I mean, first of all, thank you, Dr. Maria, for being with us. And thank you for the very good talk and very good content you shared with us. So I already had this question before, but now it makes more sense to ask this. I just had an idea of possible research, and I would like to know if there is something like this already done or not, because of course, the more north you are on the globe, the more fluctuations between blue light and dark light you have during all the year long. So my idea was to know if there is a strong correlation between the latitude of where you are living and the quality of sleep fluctuating between the months across the year. Because probably there is some correlation between that.
I have not looked at that, so I am not aware of that. But what I know is that there is a type of depression that is called seasonal affective disorder, SAD, that it is known, and I have experienced it. First time I came here, I live in Switzerland, I live in Lausanne, everything, I don't know, because you have the blinds, everything. Moved to the UK, and all of a sudden in the winter, and I always tell my students when November comes, it's going to be rubbish, it's going to be gloomy, we are going to be all depressed. It's normal, guys, it's just this time of the year. So you feel much, much worse. And that's why the treatment for SAD is just standing in front of a light. But actually what I tell my students, and I told them now during the lockdowns, go out, because the quality of the light from the sun, even if it's cloudy, the blues, you get like more blue light. So there are some of our lights, the artificial light, it can be more to the blue, more to the red. If you go outside, you get exposed to enough light that is going to help you with your mood, and probably is going to help you also to regulate your sleep, because you get like, it forces melatonin down during the day, so you are going to be more alert. And there have been studies where they have been looking at changing the fluorescent lights and how that's an impact on melatonin and alertness. And then in the night, hopefully, if you are not in front of the screen that it has all blue light, or you are using this program, that is going to help you to sleep. But I will have to look, because I have never searched about the quality of sleep when you live in the north. But I personally will say it's rubbish.
Yeah, it should. You should try the Sweden and Estonia. It's even worse.
Yes, well, I'm sure that spending the 25th of June in the Estonia or Sweden is probably not fun.
Yeah.
Alex was there. Alex was somewhere in Sweden, right? Luleå, if I remember right.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for your.
You just muted us. Yeah.
So, sorry. So thank you for your text. It was interesting. Sorry, I was late. I was a participant. Kate is right. I did some of my studies in two other countries, in Sweden, in Luleå, which is 100 kilometers from the polar circle, and also I spent some time in Lappeenranta in Finland, which is also like higher than Switzerland. And I could see both. I was in winter in Sweden, and it was the 23rd of December, and it was dark. We had like 2 hours of light, and the sun was super, super low. And when I was in La Peranta, it was the inverse. I left, I think, around the 22nd of June, so really close to the solstice. And so we didn't basically have any night. And that year, I also went to Iceland, like to Reykjavik, which is even higher than La Peranta, and there you didn't have night at all. And then when you're doing campings, it's not good. It's not good at all. But it's quite interesting to see how all of this, the effect that it has on the body, because you were talking of the blind mostly, and what my personal experience is that the blind matter more than, for example, just to have the cash on the eyes. I don't know if there is research done in that domain. Is it because through the skin on top of the eye, you can still like some sort of signal are sent to the brain, or does really that the skin can feel the light coming directly from the window, or even if your eyes are totally covered and cannot feel it at all? Is there something like that, or it's totally?
I think it may depend on the type of cover that you have for the eyes. I have seen some that you really cannot feel anything at all. It's like you try to. Another thing, it can also be that some of the things that you put on your face, they may be uncomfortable, or they may move during the night. So having a blind is good, but you will need to get like really. Sometimes the light is even, doesn't matter how much you try to close, there is always going to come a little bit out.
Okay. And on the level of the brain, how does like if you can put a sensor on the body, on the head or on the arm or anything like that, what type of signal we can get that will tell us how much light the body is experiencing? Is there something that
so it will be through so in the eye we have 3 types of the receptors, and there is a 3rd type of receptor, is the one that will sense like the blue light. It's a receptor that will not allow us to see. We don't see through that, but it senses the light, and that's why blind people that the other receptors don't work and they cannot see, they still have the circadian rhythm. Because I mean, I didn't mention it here, but I explained to our students, there have been studies with people where they put them in a room that it was there was no windows, and then they had them in a 12-hour cycle, day, night, and then they went to sleep more or less at the same time. Then they allow them to switch on and off the lights whenever they wanted, and then their sleep pattern drifted with time. Because as I mentioned in the slide, it takes a little bit for the fact that there is no light coming to you to be processed in the brain, and then to start having melatonin, and then to start feeling sleepy. Now, on the other side, you have the adenosine and the caffeine. So if you just woke up, I don't know, 3 hours ago and you slept really well, even if you are in a dark environment, it will be more difficult for you to sleep because you don't have adenosine that is going to make you sleepy.
Wow, fascinating experiments. How do they pass through ethics committee? I hope they did. Sleep deprivation.
Yeah, some of them, they are a little bit old. And I have questions for you. Is so the stuff, what I'm trying to do is, what we are trying to do, what Kate and I are trying to do, is to embed mental well-being within the curriculum. And I'm trying to do also with other schools here in the university, that is basically tell to the students things that will help them be more resilient, but that will also be meaningful for them, for their curriculum. Now, for neuroscience, it's very easy because I can tell them about neurogenesis, and we are learning about how to measure neurogenesis, and I happen also to explain an experiment where we talk about exercise. But from your point of view, from what I've been discussing, is there anything that you think a techie person will be relevant for their studies, will be relevant for them? Will it be maybe the sensors, talk a little bit about how the Fitbit works, and then explain about sleep and how sleep is important?
It will more be, at least for techie people, I think it will be mostly the aspect of about the data, about what you can learn exactly from the data that can enable them to be more resilient. Like to have this loop where you collect information, you make conclusion based on it, and after you go back again and you change something in the system and it gets better or it gets worse, depending on what the direction that you're taking. But my own opinion as a techie person will be about the data. It would be, okay, if I can measure this, oh, maybe it means that I can understand better my cognitive load and I can manage better my sleep, and it will have a direct impact on the end of the day or after a few weeks about my mental well-being. But there need to be something which is like that I can touch, that I can see. For example, I don't know, a journal, like something where they will ask me, I don't know how much sleep I got. So this gets recorded and I can put a note during the day or saying, oh, I don't feel that good today. And after, to see the effect of sleeping more, doing more exercise, and having a system telling me, oh, wait, you did better, it's going to get better. This, I will see it as a, I mean, I'm describing a tool, but still like going through the data and explaining that from it, you can build resilience by having a system which is not yourself, but knows you, but the system can know you based on the data that it collected, based on the data that you told the system to, but to make you understand that how you feel is not only in your head. There is like a direct consequence based on the data. Stress, sleep, all this kind of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like hiding it in the experimentation studies or description of it, hiding it, meaning also like really making students aware of this so-called independent variables, right? If your dependent variable is your performance or grade you get from the exam or how many lines of code you write or whatever, then it's like what are the aspects which influence it? Yeah.
Okay, any other thing that you think would help to sell this to techie people?
Yeah, I think that as Alex said, the sensors part is quite interesting for tech people, and also I think that especially because I've been searching something about brain and medicine and all that, and I think that the huge gap between the tech and the medicine is that most of the people, even the tech people, just think. I mean, when we are hearing from a neuroscientist, we are just thinking that okay, this is quite proved and this is quite good for medicine. However, we cannot measure this in an easy and customized way in every day of our life. So maybe in the presentation at the end, maybe or in the middle, just to pick up the attention from the audience, a good and practical example, just to name, for example, with this device and that device, you can monitor this, and at the end you can get conclusions on this for yourself, because this is a very good and very short example of how to do that, instead of just leaving the audience thinking, okay, if I sleep more, I get better day after and this and that. However, how can I measure that? I don't have an MRI machine at my home, so I cannot monitor that. And they just need to know that with a simple device like Fitbit or some other special device, but not that expensive or not that rare device, they can also monitor that, and they can also learn some methods to analyze the data.
So, for example, if it will be like, look, this is the Fitbit change the number of REM sleep, non-REM that you have nights. Before you put a mask to cover your eyes, and this is after, and you can see the hours before. So usually you expect to have more sleep the later in the night, but you didn't have it before. And when you cover your eyes so that you don't feel the light, all of a sudden you have much more REM sleep, and you can see it here. This is the graph. Do you think that will be?
Yeah, I think that's a good example, because I mean, of course, Fitbit is not perfect, and the measurements of sleep cycle, it's not that good. However, it's a domestic solution, so they can just, I mean, start by doing that. Just start by having a low budget device that can monitor that, and if they have some ideas or some further research aspects, they can buy something better, some ground truth devices just to measure that. But for a tech guy, I mean, it's okay just to buy some $100 device and test that in a specific scenario.
Yeah, and it's great that you are emphasizing the fact that Fitbit is not accurate. I mean, it's not great that it's not accurate, but it's at least maybe there's a systematic error in which you will see the changes in specific dimensions, right? As you're pointing out, the light sleep, REM sleep, and other types of sleep. So when we think about physical exercise, Fitbit will be good enough in order that you can document your exercise. The second thing was mindfulness and yoga, and what I see myself, and we're actually looking into this with Igor now in existing study, heart rate and resting heart rate at night, which is then really that's where you know what happens when there is a lower resting heart rate. The body relaxes more and there is a better recuperation, right? It's not a flight or fight, but it's a relax and repair which kicks in. And then the third thing, the sleep would be the sleep. So actually Fitbit, like this device, it's a good example of homemade home-based affordable device to access this different variables. Yes, great. And I can see that the time is running. We'll need to finalize our seminar. I very much appreciate we can continue the dialogue for everybody here on tuning in. Actually, some persons just entered. That means maybe there has been a time difference, time zone challenge. We are going to post this on YouTube, and we're going to send the link back to all the potential participants. And I hope we can continue the dialogue with respect to how to make a series of seminars for better mental health of students and all of us. So thank you very much. And I'm going to stop recording right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting.